So I'm going to be speaking about reframing temptation, cake, and the discursive sin. Now, cake has long suffered an image problem. I've spoken in the past about image and cake. And we noticed that in many of our core cultural narratives, such as Hansel and Gretel, Portal, American Pie, we see cake is not only commodified, but it's used as temptation to do ill-advised things. There's another example. There's a blog called Hyperbole and a Half. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. Due to this conference, in fact, I got a reference from someone to a blog post of hers about how she made many attempts to steal her grandfather's birthday cake, and the subsequent poor behavior of that she engaged in as a result of this so-called tempting cake. The real question, though, is it the cake's fault? We all like to point at cake as the tempter. But in fact, should we not be placing the blame instead on the society that frames it in this demonizing fashion? I see we've all accepted our share of blame. This social entity that is placing the onus of the temptation on cake. I'd like to refer to this entity as the patriarchy. Now, this problem goes back to the very beginning when, in the Garden of Eden, you had what people refer to as original sin. And most people say that original sin involved some sort of illicit sexual act. But in fact, this is actually just a metaphor for the actual sin, which was the consumption of something that some commentators say was wheat. Some commentators say it was an apple or a lemon of some kind, or other type of fruit or grape. These are all ingredients that could conceivably go into a cake. And really, when you break it down, that's where it all began. And people point to this as the source of cake as the tempter. However, despite the fact that the association of cake with this image of something being shameful or forbidden has persisted in our society. It is still with us today. We just had a heated argument over whether it is cake that makes you fat. I think that is a case in point of the fact that people are still pointing to cake as the problem. Now, this has led to this discourse of cake as in the role of tempter, and this discourse is very widespread. It exists not only in Western culture; it exists worldwide, and it's tarnished many a reputation based on the premise that virtuous people simply can't help themselves when confronted with cake. And aside from the fact that this is an unfortunate placement of blame on cake, it's really an unfortunate picture of humanity. And I think that's a very telling fact, the idea that human beings do not own their actions, and instead it is the cake that makes us do what we do. So I think it's very important, if we're going to subvert this discourse, that we reframe the image of cake to begin with in the context of a humanity that is powered by free will, where we do own our actions and our decisions. We're not coerced into them by an external object, no matter how sweet it is. And we won't come to vilify this object if we recognize that we are the ones accountable for the bad decisions we might make.
Bad decisions? Eating a cake?
Where we might gain weight, where we might get a sugar rush that keeps us up all night, where we might have children who get a sugar rush that keeps them up all night.
And keeps you up all night.
Where we might be spending oodles and oodles of cash on something that is, in this discourse, sinful.
How much is a hoodle?
I'm sorry?
How much is a hoodle?
An oodle. An oodle.
Yeah, how much is
Oodle.
it?
It is exactly 2 O's, a D, an L, an E, and an S. So I think the very important thing is to reframe the image of cake. Rather than being something that incites us to sin, it should be something that is simply appreciated as delicious, as worthy of celebration, of its cakely capacities, its ability to bring people together, to promote joy, to remind us how much fun a sugar high really is. We should learn to be one with our bodies, no matter how much cake we eat. It is not the fault of cake. The cake is beautiful. Now, I just want to address a point. There are those who will argue that the patriarchy is in fact fictitious. There is room for that argument, I don't deny it. Ample room, even. But whatever name you want to call it by, if you'd like to call it I thought of that name before, I can't come up with another one on the fly, but if you'd like to call it something else, for instance, if you'd like to call it society, if you'd like to call it
The National Health Association.
poor judgment, whatever you'd like to call it, there is this discourse. We cannot deny that this discourse is present, and we have to do our part to reframe cake as something that is not sinful, but beautiful. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think in all your talk of reframing the debate, you accept an assumption, which is that the eating of the cake can in some way be a shameful activity, which is of course ridiculous. We all understand eating cake is always the highest ability to which a human can achieve. So really, when you're talking about free will, not free will, it's not, what does this matter? We should be thankful the cake comes into our past and tempts us into doing the right thing of eating that beautiful, beautiful, delicious cake. I think as long as we put this as a shameful activity and discuss who to blame, as opposed to understanding the beauty of the act, we will never get past this problem.
No, you are presenting a very valid postmodern. That some on the outskirts of this discourse are beginning to make, and I'm glad you brought that into our discussion. And really, where this discourse will go in the future is anyone's guess. But really, I think the main point is that it just has to be reframed, and if it's reframed in a way that places the onus elsewhere, if it's reframed in the sense that temptation is positive in some situations, the main point is that cake should no longer be vilified and considered worthy of demonization.
In light of recent current events with regard to women's place in society, do you feel that perhaps diverts attention from the very important issue of the patriarchy? And how do you feel about that? Could these two issues perhaps be addressed at the same time? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that it is you know, a long-standing discursive tradition, a cliche one even, to place the woman in the kitchen baking the cake. And I think that in itself is a connection that seems to have eclipsed the actual issue of the cake being tempting in the first place. And I think that it is important to address both equally, to recognize each one's role in the other's improper framing. Yes, Jeremy.
Yes, I think Rachel's, it's very simple. I think you can summarize it in one sentence. Cake is not the problem, cake is the solution.
Politician, everyone. Yes, Yardena.
Don't you think you're overreacting? I mean, cake does appear in every celebration. It has positive connotations for many children. True, it is true that Marie Antoinette did lose her head over that comment about the cake, but besides that, throughout history, cake has been a positive figure.
Well, in theory, yes.
So listen.
In practice theory, however, if you've actually attended these celebrations, you know perfectly well that the cake table on the women's side of things, there's a reluctance to approach that table, much like there's a reluctance to approach this discourse in the first place. And you notice, like, the first one who goes over to the table and like starts taking cake, everybody kind of looks askance at her because they actually view their own insecurities in this woman who feels free enough to partake of the cake. And again, in the interests of not simply placing this onus on women, many diet crazy people, women and men, are often word I'm looking for, deterred by the what they feel is an inordinate number of calories in a cake, and many people will just sort of leave a lot of cake at these sorts of celebrations. And again, it's not a matter of the cake not being there, the cake not being involved in the discourse. It's the particular framework in which the cake is viewed. I'll take 2 more questions and then we'll be moving along. Shannon.
This is sort of a continuation of Yardena's question, actually. I mean, do you think that maybe it's important, considering the elitist image which Marie Antoinette and others have given to cake, maybe to present it as sort of the simpler person's option, as Jeremy was talking about, how the simple person can have more access to cake, view it more positively? Do you think that might help with reframing this temptation?
Yes, I think that any tool that we use in aiding this reframing is a good thing. It does certainly seem to help when we involve the poor and the simple. And I think that you know, these are definitely very good marketing techniques for this reframing. But on a serious note, I think that really it is, in fact, the simpler people who really make the most home-style cakes, who bring the home-baked goods into things, and it's I hesitate to blame everything on the advertising industry.
But you must.
But what the hell? I'll blame everything on the advertising industry that really hyper commodifies these cakes and makes them into something that, you know, the whole slogan of cakes being sinful, I'm fairly sure, is from the advertising industry. So,
As a serious academic, I appreciate your thoughts and this discussion about the cake as in discourse of modern society. But I find that if you wanted to break into serious academic circles, I feel like there was not enough use of the word dichotomy. Dichotomy in your paper.
I do do stand duly chastened for the lack of that word. Although I should argue that were I even to mention the word dichotomy, it would merely be to subvert it further on. I did use the word subvert several times. Because the whole concept of a dichotomy is a bit outdated in much of academia now. I think it's generally put in there as kind of a straw man argument to be dismissed later. I didn't make the rules, I just read them.
It's a short word.
But thank you. Thank you. Shauna's had her hand up for a while and it's probably going down. Yes, go ahead.
I'd actually like to broach a solution to what you said. Cupcakes. They are small, non-threatening, cute, so they appeal to the senses. They also give the person a feeling that they aren't taking as much because it's small and therefore completely non-threatening. They're also economically useful because they use all the materials. There's very little waste involved. And because it is so small, people don't feel like they're spending a lot of money on something tiny and non-threatening. And it also promotes cake in flavors and choices.
No, I think that's an excellent solution. I heavily endorse use of cupcakes for aiding in the reframing of cake's image, and that's unfortunately going to have to be it because we're running a little bit behind. We have one more speaker tonight. I was going to give us a brief break.
We're already using it.
Daniel.
It's not even here.
Wow, that's surprising.
So while we wait for him to return, I'm going to give us a 5-minute break.
Yeah, 5 minute break, great idea.
5 minutes, and then we return here to hear Daniel speak, our mystery guest, and the award ceremony.
Yes. Mystery every year.
The traditional mystery guest.
Oh, I think we had every year.
I asked that question apparently because the first